My stepmother's rings caught the light, a split second before they connected with my cheek. I tasted blood and peppermint gum as the SUV tore up the gravel road. "Sign the papers," she hissed. I refused. 10 minutes later, the front door swung open to reveal my grandmother standing beside a county sheriff and a massive steel safe. She had not just opened the door, she had opened the trap. My name is Natalie Pierce, and at 32 years old, I should have known better than to get into a car with a woman who had spent 2 decades praying for my downfall. The silence inside the charcoal SUV was not peaceful. It was a heavy, suffocating thing, pressurized by the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the aggressive blast of the air conditioner. Outside, the landscape had shifted from the urban sprawl of Denver to the vast, empty stretches of the Wyoming border, where the sky turned the color of bruised iron and the wind whipped through the dry grass. Inside, however, the temperature was set to Arctic freeze because Lynn claimed her hot flashes were killing her. My fingers were turning blue in my lap, but I refused to ask her to turn it down. That was the game. If I asked for comfort, she won. If I asked to change the radio station from the shrill political talk show she had been blasting for 3 hours, she won. She knew exactly what she was doing. Lynn always knew. My bladder had been screaming at me for the last 40 miles. It was a physical ache, a sharp cramp that radiated through my lower back, making it impossible to focus on anything other than the rhythmic thumping of the wheels over the expansion joints of the highway. I shifted in the leather seat, trying to find a position that did not hurt, but the seatbelt locked tight against my chest. Lynn glanced at me from the driver's seat. She was wearing her signature oversized sunglasses and a scarf that cost more than my first car, bought with money my father had earned and she had spent. "Sit still," she snapped. "You are fidgeting like a toddler." "I need to use the restroom." "Lynn," I said. My voice sounded calm, practiced. It was the voice I used in boardrooms and during crisis management calls. A voice stripped of emotion so that no one could find a jagged edge to grab onto. "Please pull over at the next exit." She did not even check the rearview mirror. "We are making good time. I am not stopping just because you cannot control yourself." "I have not gone since we left Denver," I reminded her. "That was 3 hours ago." "You should have thought of that before you drank that entire bottle of water." "Honestly, Natalie, you are so selfish. Your father is lying in a hospital bed, possibly dying, and all you can think about is your own comfort." The guilt trip was automatic, a reflex honed over 20 years of step-parenting, but the reality was different. I was the one paying the hospital bills. I was the one who had wired $5,000 last week just to keep the home care nurse employed because Lynn claimed the insurance had lapsed. I was the financial spine of this family. Yet in this car, I was 12 years old again, begging for permission to exist. "I am not asking for a spa day. Lynn, I am asking for a toilet. Pull over." She ignored me, humming along to a commercial for gold bullion on the radio. 10 minutes later, the pain was blinding. I looked out the window, watching mile marker 340 flash by. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trucking routes and industrial oblivion. Finally, a sign appeared for a travel center. "I am going to throw up if we do not stop," I lied. That got her attention. Lynn cared about the upholstery of her leased luxury vehicle far more than she cared about my internal organs. She let out a dramatic, suffering sigh and jerked the steering wheel to the right, taking the exit ramp with enough speed to make the tires squeal. We did not go to the clean, well-lit gas station near the highway. Instead, she drove past it, heading toward a grimy, gravel-covered lot designated for long-haul truckers. The place looked like a relic from a forgotten era, smelling of diesel fumes and stale grease. Massive 18-wheelers were parked in uneven rows, their engines idling with a deep, vibrating rumble that shook the ground. Lynn killed the engine, but did not unlock the doors. She turned in her seat to face me, the leather creaking under her weight. Her lipstick was a perfect, violent shade of coral. "Before you get out, we need to get one thing straight," she said. "Open the door, Lynn." "Not until you acknowledge the reality of this situation," she said, her voice dropping to that low, dangerous register she used when my father was out of the room. "You are going there to sign the transfer deeds. That is it. I do not want you whispering in his ear. I do not want you upsetting him with your drama." "My drama?" I stared at her, incredulous. "I am here because you called me screaming that he had hours to live." "He is delicate," she yelled, slamming her hand against the steering wheel. "And you are ungrateful. I wiped your nose. I fed you. I kept a roof over your head while your father was away working. And this is how you repay me? By acting like a princess who is too good to sit in a car for a few hours?" The lock on the door remained engaged. I looked at the handle, calculating whether I could force it. Outside, a few truckers were walking toward the diner, heads down against the wind. No one was looking at us. We were just two women in a car, having a conversation. "I am not signing anything until I speak to his doctor." I said, "You will sign what I tell you to sign, or you can find your own ride to the hospital." "Fine," I said. I reached for the lock manually, flipping the latch. The sound of the lock clicking open seemed to snap something inside her. As I pushed the door open and stepped out onto the oil-stained gravel, the cold wind hit me, a relief against the stifling heat of the car. I took a breath, ready to sprint toward the cinder block building that promised a restroom. But I never made it past the doorframe. Lynn moved with a speed that defied her age. She lunged across the center console, her fingernails digging into the flesh of my upper arm. She yanked me backward, half in and half out of the car. "You do not walk away from me when I am speaking to you," she shrieked. "Let go of me!" I tried to wrench my arm away, but her grip was iron. She scrambled out of the driver's side, marching around the front of the hood. I had managed to pull myself free and was standing by the passenger door, rubbing my arm. When she rounded the corner, her face was twisted, the mask of the grieving wife gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated malice. "You think you are so special because you have a little money now?" She spat, stepping into my personal space. "You are nothing. You are the same pathetic little girl who cried for her mommy." "Lynn, stop. People are watching." "Let them watch. Let them see what a disrespectful brat looks like." She raised her hand. It happened in slow motion, yet it was too fast to dodge. I saw the flash of her diamond engagement ring, the one my father had bought her for their 10th anniversary, an upgrade from the modest band he had given my mother. The slap connected with a wet, cracking sound that echoed across the quiet lot. My head snapped to the left. The pain was immediate, a sharp, stinging fire that radiated from my cheekbone to my jaw. My ear rang. I stumbled back against the side of the SUV, the metal cold against my spine. It was not the pain that shocked me. She had hit me before. She used to pinch me under the dinner table, kick my shins when I spoke out of turn. But she had never done it in public. She had never lost control where the world could see. I looked up, hand cupping my throbbing cheek, and saw the fear flash in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of exposure. Her eyes darted around the lot. That was when she saw him. Parked 2 spaces over was a massive blue semi-truck. The engine was off, but the cabin lights were on. Sitting in the driver's seat, staring directly down at us through the windshield, was a man. He had a heavy beard and a baseball cap pulled low, and his expression was unreadable. But Lynn saw him looking, and just like that, the switch flipped. She let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. She threw her hands up in a defensive posture, stumbling back as if I had been the one to strike her. "Get away from me!" she screamed, her voice shrill and carrying on the wind. "Help! Someone help me! She is crazy!" I stood frozen, my hands still on my face, watching the performance. "Please," she sobbed, looking toward the few people near the diner entrance. "My stepdaughter is attacking me. She is off her meds. Please, someone call the police." The audacity was breathtaking. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. This was her masterpiece. She was going to frame me for assault in a truck stop in Wyoming. And who would they believe? The hysterical, well-dressed older woman, or the 32-year-old with the red mark on her face who looked like she was in shock. "I am sorry," Lynn yelled at me, fake tears streaming down her face. "I am sorry I could not give you more money. Please do not hit me again." "Lynn, stop," I whispered, my voice trembling. She lunged at me again, grabbing my shoulders, shaking me violently while screaming for help. To an observer, it might look like she was trying to restrain someone violent. Up close, I could see the cold calculation in her eyes. Suddenly, a heavy door slammed. The sound broke through Lynn's screeching. I looked over. The driver of the blue truck was climbing down from his cab. He was tall, wearing a flannel shirt and heavy work boots that crunched loudly on the gravel. He did not look at the other bystanders. He walked straight toward us. Lynn released me, stumbling back, clutching her chest. "Thank God," she gasped. "Sir, please, you have to help me. She is having an episode. She just attacked me. I am trying to get her to the hospital." The man stopped about 5 feet away. He ignored Lynn completely. His eyes landed on me. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked. His voice was deep, rough like gravel, but steady. I stammered. "She is dangerous," Lynn interjected, stepping between us. "You need to back away. I am her mother. I can handle this." The man looked at Lynn then. He did not blink. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a smartphone. He held it up, tapping the screen. "I do not think she is the dangerous one, lady," he said. Lynn's face went pale beneath her makeup. "Excuse me?" I said, "I do not think she is the one attacking anyone." He turned the phone screen toward us. It was a live feed from a dashcam mounted high inside his windshield. The angle was perfect. It showed the side of the SUV. It showed me stepping out. It showed Lynn dragging me. And it showed, with crystal clarity, Lynn winding up and slapping me across the face before starting her screaming fit. "I have been parked here for 20 minutes eating my lunch," the man said. "My rig has a wide-angle lens. It has been rolling the whole time." The silence that followed was absolute. The wind whistled through the gap between the trucks. Lynn stared at the phone, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "I suggest you step away from her," the man said. In the distance, faint but growing louder, the wail of a siren cut through the air. Someone else had called the police. Lynn heard it too. The blood rushed back into her face, turning it a mottled red. She looked at the man, then at the camera, and finally at me. She realized her narrative was dead on arrival. She realized she had lost control of the scene. She took a step toward me, closing the distance so the truck driver could not hear. Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist, her nails digging into the tender skin of my pulse point. It looked like a mother comforting a daughter, but the grip was a vice. "Listen to me, Natalie," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous vibration that barely escaped her throat. I tried to pull away, but she held on. "You say one word to those cops," she whispered, her breath smelling of peppermint and rot. "You show them that video, or you press charges, and you will never see your father again. I have power of attorney. I will ban you from the room. I will let him die alone, wondering why you never came. Do you understand me?" The siren grew louder. The blue lights flashed against the gray sky. Caleb, the truck driver, took a step forward. "Is she threatening you?" he asked. Lynn squeezed my wrist one last time, hard enough to bruise, her eyes boring into mine with the intensity of a cult leader. "Tell him," she commanded softly. "Tell him it was a misunderstanding." I looked at the approaching police cruiser, then at the camera in the stranger's hand, and finally at the woman who had made my life a quiet hell for 2 decades. The pain in my cheek was throbbing, but the pain in my heart was worse. She held the only thing I cared about hostage. I took a breath, the cold air filling my lungs, and made a choice that tasted like ash. To understand how I ended up freezing in a truck stop parking lot with a burning cheek and a silent ultimatum hanging over my head. You have to understand the architecture of the house I grew up in. It was a standard suburban 2-story in Aurora, Colorado, with beige siding and a manicured lawn, but inside, The walls were built out of debt and obligation. My father, Mark Pierce, brought Lynn into our lives when I was 14. She swept in like a weather front, all high pressure and electric energy, filling the silence that my mother's death had left behind 2 years prior. To the neighbors and the congregation at the First Methodist Church, Lynn was a saint. She was the woman who had taken on a grieving widower and his sullen teenage daughter, a woman of infinite patience and boundless charity. She baked casseroles for sick parishioners and organized the spring fundraiser. She held my father's hand in public and smoothed his collar with a possessiveness that looked, to the untrained eye, like devotion. But inside the house, Lynn was busy rewriting history. It started small. She would move a framed photo of my mother from the mantel to the hallway, then to the guest room, and finally into a box in the attic labeled Fragile. She began to drop subtle, poisonous comments about my mother's instability or her lack of discipline, painting herself not just as a successor, but as a rescuer. She saved us. That was the narrative. Without her, my father would have drowned in his grief and I would have gone wild. By the time I was 16, the terms of my existence had been renegotiated. I was no longer a daughter. I was a capital investment. Lynn did not believe in unconditional love. She believed in transactional relationships. Every dollar spent on me was logged in a mental ledger she kept with terrifying accuracy. If I needed braces, it was an investment in my future employability. If I needed a tutor for calculus, it was a down payment on the salary she expected me to earn. She stopped buying me clothes because I liked them and started buying them because they looked presentable for the kind of future she was designing. "You are going to be somebody, Natalie," she would tell me while aggressively brushing my hair before a school event. "We are pouring a lot of resources into you. You need to make sure the return is worth it." At 17, I thought this was normal. I thought all parents viewed their children as high-yield bonds. When I won a full scholarship to the state university, Lynn took the credit. She told everyone at the country club that it was her rigorous schedule that got me there. When I graduated and landed a junior analyst position at Clearline Metrics, a fintech startup in Denver that was just beginning to make waves, Lynn did not congratulate me. She sat me down at the kitchen table with a calculator. She laid out a spreadsheet of what she claimed they had spent on me since I was 14. The food, the electricity, the gas for the car to drive me to debate practice. It was thousands of dollars. "Now the harvest begins," she had said, smiling that tight, coral-lipped smile. "We are so relieved. Natalie, you are officially our retirement plan." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It was not a joke. My father, for his part, faded into the wallpaper. Mark Pierce was a man who wanted peace at any cost. He loved me, I knew that. But he feared Lynn. He operated on a policy of appeasement. Whenever Lynn would corner me about contributing my fair share or criticizing my life choices, Dad would find a sudden interest in the garage or the garden. If I pushed back, he would pull me aside later, his eyes tired and pleading. "She just wants what is best for you. Nat," he would say, "she is just worried about security. You know how she gets." He made her abuse sound like a weather pattern, something inevitable that we just had to endure. The dynamic shifted aggressively when I was 25. That was the year Ryan moved back in. Ryan was Lynn's son from her first marriage, a man of 30 who had never finished a degree and had a resume full of entrepreneurial ventures that were really just expensive hobbies. To Lynn, Ryan was a delicate genius who just had not found his footing. To everyone else, he was a leech. While I was working 60-hour weeks analyzing risk data and climbing the ladder at Clearline, Ryan was sleeping until noon in the guest room and playing video games. Yet, at dinner, Lynn would serve him the largest steak. She would hush me if I made too much noise while getting ready for work because Ryan was up late brainstorming. The resentment began to build in my chest like bile. But Lynn had found the ultimate leverage, my father's heart. Mark had his first minor heart attack when I was 26. It terrified me, and Lynn saw that terror not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. She took control of his medical care with the same militant efficiency she applied to everything else. She managed the appointments, the pills, and most importantly, the narrative of his health, and she began to hold his life hostage for cash. It started with copays that seemed higher than they should be. Then it was specialist fees that insurance allegedly refused to cover. I would get frantic phone calls at my desk in the middle of a meeting. "He needs this medication." "Natalie," she would whisper, her voice trembling with manufactured panic. "The pharmacy wants $200. I do not have it until next week. Do you want him to go without it? Do you want him to have another episode?" I would wire the money immediately. Of course I did. I loved him. It escalated. The roof needed fixing because the dampness is bad for his lungs. The furnace needed upgrading because the cold strains his heart. I paid for it all. I paid for the new siding. I paid for the landscaping. I even paid $10,000 to invest in one of Ryan's doomed e-commerce businesses because Lynn claimed the stress of Ryan's failure was raising my father's blood pressure. "This is your house too. One day," she would say when I hesitated, "you are investing in your inheritance. When we are gone, this all goes to you. It is the least you can do, considering everything we sacrificed to raise you." I was 28 when I cracked, just a little. I went to see a therapist in downtown Denver, a woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. I spent 2 sessions talking about my stress at work and my difficult family dynamic. In the second session, the therapist stopped me. She put down her notepad and looked at me with profound sadness. "Natalie," she said, "I want you to listen to the words you are using. You describe a system where affection is withheld until payment is rendered. You describe fear of your father's death being used to extort money. This is not just a difficult dynamic. This is financial and emotional abuse." I stood up. My heart was hammering. The word abuse felt violent, dirty. It felt like an insult to the memory of the woman who had ostensibly kept my family together. Abuse was bruises. Abuse was shouting. Abuse was not a well-kept house and a stepmother who bragged about my job title to her friends. "I am not being abused." I had snapped at the therapist. "I am just a good daughter." I never went back. I canceled the next appointment and buried myself in work, justifying every check I wrote as duty. I told myself I was strong enough to handle it. I told myself that as long as I kept paying, my father would be safe, and eventually, I would earn my freedom. But standing in that wind-scoured parking lot in Wyoming, with the ghost of her handprint throbbing on my face, the therapist's voice came back to me. It hit me harder than the slap. For years, I had convinced myself that Lynn's cruelty was subtle, that it was a complex web of expectations that I just had to navigate. But there was nothing subtle about a slap in a truck stop. There was nothing complex about the way she had looked at the camera and then threatened to ban me from my dying father's bedside. The veil had been ripped away. She did not see me as a daughter. She did not even see me as a person. I was an ATM with a pulse. I was a resource she intended to mine until I was empty. And then she would discard the husk. I looked at the gravel under my boots. I thought about the thousands of dollars I had poured into a house I did not live in. I thought about Ryan, probably sitting on the couch right now watching TV on a flat screen I had paid for. I thought about my father, lying in a hospital bed, likely unaware that his wife was using his mortality as a weapon to keep me in line. The word abuse floated in my mind again. This time, I did not push it away. This time, I let it settle. It was heavy, and it was cold, but it had the undeniable weight of truth. I was 32 years old. I was a senior risk analyst for a major company. I could spot a fraudulent transaction in a database of millions. Yet, I had let this woman defraud me of my life for 18 years. Lynn was still gripping my wrist, her fingernails digging in, waiting for my submission. She expected the Natalie of the past, the teenager who desperately wanted a mother, the young woman who was terrified of being orphaned. She expected me to nod, to wipe my face, and to get back in the car. But the Natalie who got back in the car would not be the same one who had stepped out of it. I looked at her, really looked at her, stripping away the titles of stepmother and caregiver. I saw a predator in a silk scarf. "Okay, Lynn," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow, detached. I will get back in the car. She exhaled, her shoulders dropping as the victory registered. She thought she had won again. She thought the threat had worked. She released my wrist and smoothed the front of her jacket, composing herself as the police cruiser turned into the lot. "Good," she whispered. "Now fix your hair. You look a mess." I reached up and touched my hair, but my eyes never left hers. I was going to get back in that car. I was going to go to the hospital, but not because I was afraid of her. I was going to go because that was where the war was going to end. I turned toward the truck driver, Caleb, who was still holding his phone like a shield. I gave him the smallest nod, a microscopic signal that I hoped he understood. Then, I turned my back on the freedom of the open lot and climbed back into the cage, closing the door on the cold Wyoming wind. The Wyoming state trooper did not look like he was in the mood for nuance. He looked like a man who had been patrolling a stretch of highway that consisted mostly of wind and antelope for 10 hours, and he wanted this resolved quickly. He stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt, his sunglasses reflecting the gray sky. Lynn was ready for him, before his boots even hit the gravel. She had transformed. The vicious, snarling woman who had threatened me seconds ago was gone. In her place stood a trembling, terrified mother, clutching her chest with one hand and her wrist with the other, as if checking for broken bones. "Officer, thank God you are here," she cried out, her voice pitching up into a perfect frequency of distress. The officer, a broad-shouldered man with a name tag that read Deptford, walked straight to her. He did not look at me. He looked at the woman who had made the call. "Are you injured, ma'am?" he asked. "She is having an episode," Lynn sobbed, gesturing vaguely in my direction without making eye contact. "My stepdaughter. She has a history of mental instability." I tried to calm her down, but she just snapped. She grabbed my wrist. I think she might have sprained it. I stood by the SUV, my cheeks still throbbing, feeling the blood drain from my face. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She had taken the truth, that she had assaulted me, and inverted it so completely that I felt dizzy. "Officer, that is not true," I said, taking a step forward. "I just wanted to use the restroom." "Ma'am, stay back," Deptford barked, holding up a hand. He did not even look at my face. He saw a 32-year-old woman standing over a crying senior citizen. The narrative was already written in his head. "She is not on her medication," Lynn whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "We are on our way to see her dying father. The stress. It just broke her. Please, I do not want to press charges. I just want her to get back in the car so we can go. She is dangerous to herself." It was the perfect lie. It painted her as the benevolent, long-suffering caregiver and me as the volatile burden. If I yelled, I proved her point. If I cried, I proved her point. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the professional demeanor I used when presenting quarterly risk assessments. "Officer Deptford," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My name is Natalie Pierce. I have no history of mental illness. This woman is my stepmother, and she struck me in the face because I asked to stop to use the bathroom." The officer looked at me then. He looked at the red mark blooming on my left cheek. For a second, I saw a flicker of doubt. But then Lynn let out a sharp cry of pain, rubbing her wrist. "Oh, it hurts." She twisted my arm. "Officer, look at her. She is delusional. She hit herself." Deptford's face hardened. He turned back to me, his hand resting near his belt. "Ma'am, I need you to turn around and place your hands on the vehicle. We are going to separate you two until I can figure out what is going on." The injustice of it burned hotter than the slap. I was the one who had been hit. I was the one who had been financially bled dry for years. And now, I was the one being treated like a criminal in a roadside parking lot because Lynn knew how to cry on cue. I turned toward the car, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. I was going to be detained. She was going to win. Again. "Officer." The voice was deep, calm, and cut through the wind like a foghorn. Deptford paused. He turned to look at the blue semi-truck parked 2 spaces over. Caleb was standing there, holding his phone. He had not moved since the police arrived, but now he walked forward, his heavy boots crunching on the stones. He did not look intimidated by the badge or the gun. He looked like a man who had seen everything the highway had to offer and was unimpressed by all of it. "Sir, step back," Deptford warned. "This is a private matter." "It is not private if it happens in a public lot," Caleb said. He stopped a respectful distance away, holding the phone out. "And before you put cuffs on the wrong person, you might want to see what my dashcam picked up." Lynn's crying stopped abruptly. She straightened up, her eyes darting from the officer to Caleb. "This man is a stranger," she shrilled. "He does not know anything. He is probably harassing us." Caleb ignored her. "Officer, my rig has a wide-angle lens. It has been recording since they pulled in. It captured the audio too." Deptford looked at Lynn, then at Caleb. The certainty in his posture wavered. "What is on the video, sir?" Deptford asked. Caleb tapped the screen. The lady in the scarf refused to let the younger woman out to use the bathroom for 5 minutes. Then, when the younger woman got out, the lady in the scarf dragged her back, screamed at her, and slapped her across the face. Lynn let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "That is ridiculous. It was a family argument. You know how it is. Officer, emotions are high. We are all just tired." Caleb turned the phone screen toward the officer. "Just watch." Deptford hesitated, then stepped forward. He took the phone from Caleb's hand. The silence that stretched out over the next 60 seconds was the loudest silence of my life. I stood by the car, hands hovering near the metal, watching the officer's face. He watched the screen intently. He swiped to rewind. He listened. I knew what he was seeing. He was seeing the truth stripped of Lynn's performance. He was seeing the malice. He was seeing the slap. And most damning of all, he was seeing the moment Lynn realized she was being watched and instantly switched into victim mode. Lynn shifted her weight. Her confidence was evaporating. She smoothed her scarf, then touched her hair. "It really is just a misunderstanding," she said, her voice trembling. But this time it was real fear, not acting. "We are just under so much stress. My husband—" Deptford handed the phone back to Caleb. Then he turned to Lynn. The look on his face had changed completely. The boredom was gone. The sympathy was gone. His eyes were cold, flat, and professional. "Ma'am, drop the act," he said. Lynn flinched as if he had hit her. "Excuse me?" "I saw the video," Deptford said, his voice dropping an octave. "You struck this woman. She did not touch you. And you just filed a false verbal report with a police officer claiming she assaulted you." "But," Lynn stammered, she provoked me. You do not understand what I have to deal with." "I understand that in the state of Wyoming, battery is a crime," Deptford said. He reached for his notepad. "I am going to need to see your identification. Now." "But we have to go," Lynn cried, desperation creeping in. "My husband is dying." "Then you probably should not have stopped to assault your stepdaughter," Deptford said dryly. "ID, now." Lynn fumbled with her purse, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She pulled out her license and handed it to him, her face a mask of humiliated rage. She looked at me, her eyes screaming the things she could not say aloud. Deptford walked back to his cruiser to run her information. He left us standing there in the wind. For the first time in 20 years, the power dynamic had shifted. Lynn was not the authority figure. She was a suspect, and I was not the problem child. I was the victim. Lynn took a step toward me. She kept her back to the cruiser so the officer could not see her face. "You think you are clever?" she hissed, her voice a low, grinding sound. "You think this helps you?" I stared at her. I did not look down. I did not apologize. "You hit me, Lynn," I said quietly. "You embarrassed me," she spat, "and you are going to fix this. When we get to that hospital, you are going to tell your father that this was a joke, that we were just playing around." "Or what?" I asked. "Or I will make sure the last conversation you have with him is about how much of a disappointment you are. I will tell him you caused a scene and delayed us. I will tell him you wanted me arrested instead of coming to say goodbye. Do you think his heart can take that?" It was a monstrous thing to say. It was the kind of threat that only someone who viewed human beings as pawns could make. Deptford walked back over, holding a carbon copy of a citation. "Ma'am, I am citing you for simple battery," he said, handing the paper to Lynn. She snatched it from him. "Because there is clear video evidence, I am filing this report. You have a court date in 3 weeks. If you miss it, a warrant will be issued." He turned to me. "Ma'am, do you want to press further charges? I can take her in right now if you feel unsafe." I looked at Lynn. She was vibrating with fury, but there was fear there too. Real fear. If she was arrested, we would not make it to the hospital. My father might die while she sat in a holding cell, and she would blame me for eternity. "No," I said, my voice heavy. "We need to get to the hospital. But thank you, officer." Deptford nodded, though he looked like he disagreed with my choice. He turned to Caleb. "Sir, I have your information. I might need a copy of that file emailed to the department." "Already saved it," Caleb said. "I will send it over as soon as I get a Wi-Fi signal." Deptford got back in his cruiser and waited, clearly intending to watch us leave to ensure no further violence occurred. Lynn marched around to the driver's side of the SUV, slamming the door so hard the vehicle shook. She refused to look at me. I stood there for a moment, feeling the adrenaline crash. I turned to Caleb. He was putting his phone back in his pocket. He looked like he just wanted to get back to his lunch. "Thank you," I said. I did not know what else to say. The words felt inadequate. You did not have to do that." He looked at me, his expression softening for the first time. He took a card out of his shirt pocket and handed it to me. It was a simple business card for a trucking logistics company with his name and email scrawled on the back. "My sister was married to a guy like that," Caleb said quietly. "Everyone thought he was a saint. It took us 3 years to figure out why she flinched when he moved too fast." I looked at the card, then back at him. "Bullies only work in the dark, miss," he said. "That video is yours. If you need the raw file for anything else, lawyers, family, whatever, you email me. I am not deleting it." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. A stranger in a flannel shirt had just shown me more protection and loyalty in 10 minutes than my father had in a decade. "You be careful in that car," he added. "I will," I said. I climbed back into the passenger seat. The interior of the SUV was silent as a grave. Lynn started the engine, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She pulled out of the lot, driving strictly under the speed limit because the police cruiser was still watching. She did not speak to me. She did not have to. The air between us was electric with hatred. But as I looked down at Caleb's card in my hand, I realized something that made my heart race faster than the fear. I had proof. For years, Lynn had operated on hearsay and gaslighting. She controlled the narrative because she was the only one telling the story. But now, there was a record. There was a file on a server somewhere that showed exactly who she was when she thought no one was looking. It was not just evidence of a slap. It was the first crack in the foundation of the prison she had built around me. And as we merged back onto the highway, heading toward my dying father, I realized that I was not just bringing myself to his bedside. I was bringing the truth. The fluorescent lights of my apartment in Denver hummed with a frequency that seemed to vibrate right against the throbbing bruise on my cheek. I had called in sick to Clearline Metrics for the first time in 4 years, telling my manager I had a family emergency. It was not a lie. The emergency was that my family was a crime scene, and I was just now finding the body. I sat at my kitchen island with 3 laptops open. In my professional life, I hunted anomalies. I looked for the tiny, jagged spikes in smooth data sets that indicated fraud, embezzlement, or system failure. I was good at it because I knew how to look past the noise, but for the last decade, I had been the noise. I had been so busy managing the emotional volatility of Lynn and the declining health of my father that I had never bothered to run a diagnostic on my own life. That ended today. I logged into my primary checking account. Usually, I just checked the balance, ensured the autopay for the mortgage on my dad's house went through, and closed the tab. Today, I exported 5 years of transaction history into a spreadsheet. It took me less than 10 minutes to find the bleed. There were recurring transfers, scheduled for the 3rd of every month, labeled with innocuous tags like medical copays or household contingency. They started small, $200 here, $300 there, but as I scrolled down the timeline, the numbers swelled. 500, 800, 1 month, a lump sum of $2,000. I clicked on the transaction details for the most recent transfer. The destination was a joint account at a bank I did not use. I traced the IP address of the device that had initiated the transfer. It was not my phone. It was not my work computer. It was a static IP address provided by a local internet service provider in Aurora. It was the IP address of my father's home office, Lynn's office. She had logged into my account, likely using a password I had written down for my father in case of emergencies years ago, and she had set up a siphon. She was not just asking for money anymore. She was taking it, skimming off the top like a corrupt casino pit boss. But that was just the surface damage. The real horror waited in my credit report. I navigated to the credit bureau's portal and paid the fee to unlock my full history. When the file loaded, the breath left my lungs in a sharp, painful hiss. My credit utilization was at 85%. My eyes scanned the lines, trying to make sense of the red ink. There was my student loan, paid off. There was my car lease. And then, there was a list of liabilities that made the room spin. First, there was a home equity line of credit taken out on my father's house 2 years ago. I stared at the screen. I was listed as a co-borrower. I had never signed paperwork for a second mortgage. I clicked on the document view. There, at the bottom of the PDF, was a digital signature. It spelled my name. But the timestamp showed it had been signed at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. On that specific Tuesday, I had been in a mandatory compliance seminar in Chicago. I could prove it with flight logs and hotel receipts. Someone had clicked I accept pretending to be me. Below the mortgage, there were 3 more accounts I did not recognize, 2 credit cards, and a personal loan, all held by High Prairie Mutual, a small credit union near my father's house. The total outstanding balance across the 3 accounts was nearly $45,000. The mailing address for these accounts was not my apartment in Denver. It was my father's house in Aurora. That was why I never saw the bills. That was why I never saw the late notices. Lynn was intercepting the mail before it even left the driveway. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to set it on the counter to dial. I called High Prairie Mutual. The woman who answered had a cheerful, small-town voice. I gave her my social security number and verified my identity. I am looking at a personal loan under my name. I said, my voice tight. I did not open this loan. I need to know who authorized it. Oh, let me pull that up. Hun, she said. Okay, I see it here. That was opened in person 14 months ago. In person? I asked. By me? Well, let's see the notes. It looks like your father, Mark Pierce, and his wife, Lynn, came in. They had a power of attorney document for your father, and Mrs. Pierce noted that you were unavailable to come in due to work, but had given verbal consent to be added to the note to assist with family property repairs. Since you were already a co-signer on the original deed, and with the POA, well, the loan officer approved it. Verbal consent. The room felt cold. In the world of finance, verbal consent for a $40,000 loan based on a power of attorney that belonged to a different person was not just irregular, it was illegal. It was fraud. If I saw this in a client's file at Clearline Metrics, I would have flagged it for the legal department and the federal regulators before I finished my coffee. Thank you, I whispered. I hung up before she could ask why I sounded like I was dying. I looked back at the spreadsheet. I started cross-referencing the dates of the loans and the credit card charges with my memory of family events. The personal loan for $15,000 was taken out 3 weeks before Ryan, my stepbrother, bought his new lifted pickup truck. Lynn had told me he bought it with savings from his crypto investments. One of the credit cards was maxed out 2 summers ago. That was the same summer Lynn had renovated the kitchen with high-end granite countertops and smart appliances, claiming she had found a scratch-and-dent sale that made it affordable. The other card showed a stream of charges to a property management company. That coincided with Ryan's brief, disastrous attempt to run an Airbnb business, a venture that failed because he refused to clean the unit between guests. I had paid for all of it. I had not just been helping with medical bills, I had been funding their lifestyle. I was the silent partner in the business of their comfort, and my equity was zero. They had stolen my identity, ruined my credit, and leveraged my future to buy trucks and granite countertops. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to close my eyes. This was not just bad money management. This was predatory. This was a systematic extraction of resources from a host. I needed to call my father. It was a foolish impulse. Part of me knew that. But the little girl inside me, the one who still remembered him teaching her to ride a bike before Lynn arrived, needed to know if he was a hostage or an accomplice. I dialed his cell. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick and slurred, likely from the heavy painkillers Lynn dispensed to him like candy. "Nat," he mumbled, "is everything okay? Lynn said you guys had a little spat at the rest stop." A little spat. She had slapped me across the face and he called it a spat. "Dad," I said, pressing the phone to my ear, "I am looking at my credit report. Did you know there is a second mortgage on the house? Did you know there are credit cards in my name that are maxed out?" There was a long pause on the line. I heard the faint sound of the television in the background. Some game show with cheering audiences. "Oh, honey, don't worry about that," he said, his voice trailing off. "It is just, paperwork. Lynn handles the paperwork." "Dad, this is not paperwork. This is $45,000 of debt in my name that I did not agree to. Did you sign my name?" He sighed. A heavy, rattling sound. "Natalie, we are a family. Everything is. It is all one pot, really. Lynn said it was the only way to keep the rates down. You have good credit. We needed to fix the roof. You want us to have a roof, don't you?" The script? He was reading from the script she had drilled into him. "Dad, did you know she bought Ryan a truck with that money?" He got defensive then. A weak flash of irritation. "Ryan needs a vehicle to look for work. Natalie, you are so hard on him. You have so much, and you begrudge your brother a chance to get on his feet?" My brother. The 30-year-old man who played video games while I worked 60-hour weeks. I realized then that it did not matter if my father knew the legal specifics. He had surrendered his moral compass years ago. He had traded his integrity for the comfort of letting Lynn make the hard decisions. He was not a victim in the way I wanted him to be. He was a collaborator. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "she hit me. Yesterday. She hit me in the face." "Oh. Nat," he said, sounding exhausted. "She is just stressed. You provoked her. You know how she gets when she is worried about me. Just apologize to her, okay? For me? Just make peace. I cannot handle the fighting." I lowered the phone from my ear. I did not say goodbye. I just pressed the red button and ended the call. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. The slap in the parking lot, the way Lynn had panicked when I threatened to get out of the car, the way she had tried to isolate me from him. It all clicked into place. She was not hitting me because she was stressed. She was not hitting me because she was a strict mother. She was hitting me because she was terrified. She knew that if I looked too closely, if I pulled the right thread, the entire tapestry of lies she had woven would unravel. She knew that she had committed felony fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. She was not protecting my father's health. She was protecting her own freedom. She kept him drugged and compliant so he would sign whatever she put in front of him, and she kept me guilty and distant so I would just pay the bills without asking questions. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was not just a daughter having a conflict with a difficult stepmother. I was a whistleblower in a house of cards. And the moment I walked back into that house, I would be walking into a trap. I looked at the bruise in the reflection of my laptop screen. It was turning a sickly shade of purple. "I am not safe," I said aloud to the empty room. "I am not safe near these people." I reached for my external hard drive. The analyst in me took over. The daughter was gone, buried under the weight of $45,000 in stolen debt. I began to download everything: the bank statements, the credit reports, the loan documents with the forged signatures. I created a folder and named it Evidence. Then, I picked up the business card the truck driver had given me. Caleb Ross. I opened my email client. I typed his address into the To field. Subject: the video. I typed 2 sentences. Please send me the file. I'm going to need it. I hit send. Then I picked up my phone again and dialed the number for the fraud department at High Prairie Mutual. I would not be apologizing to Lynn. I would not be making peace for my father's sake. I was going to burn their little kingdom to the ground, and I was going to use their own paper trail as the kindling. The waiting room of Dr. Mara Jensen's practice smelled faintly of lavender and old paper, a scent that instantly transported me back 4 years to the last time I had sat in this chair. Back then, I had been 28, frantic, and desperate for someone to tell me that my family dynamic was normal, just a little high pressure. When Dr. Jensen had gently suggested the word abuse, I had bolted like a frightened deer, canceling my follow-up appointments and burying myself in work. I was not running today. I sat with my hands clasped tight in my lap, my knuckles white. The bruise on my cheek was covered with foundation, but it felt heavy, like a lead weight pulling down the corner of my mouth. When the door opened and Dr. Jensen beckoned me in, she did not look surprised to see me. She just gave me a small, professional nod. "Hello, Natalie," she said. "Come on in." I walked into her office and sat down. For a long moment, I could not speak. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of the things I had been too afraid to say for decades. I looked at the bookshelf, at the diploma on the wall, anywhere but at her eyes. I started, my voice cracking. "I think you were right." "Dr. Jensen did not say I told you so." She sat back in her chair, holding a notepad but not writing. "Tell me what happened." And then the dam broke. I told her everything. I told her about the drive to Wyoming. I told her about the truck stop, the way Lynn had denied me the bathroom, the slap that still echoed in my ears, and the performance she had put on for the police. I told her about the dashcam footage from the trucker, the only piece of objective reality I had held on to in years. Then I opened my bag and pulled out the printouts I had made the night before. I laid them on the coffee table between us. I told her about the money, the $45,000 in debt, the second mortgage, the identity theft. I told her how I had felt when I realized my father was not a helpless bystander, but a co-signer to my ruin. As I spoke, a part of me, the part that Lynn had trained so well, waited for Dr. Jensen to stop me. I waited for her to say that I was exaggerating, that I was being dramatic, that families share finances and I should be more understanding of their struggle. I waited to be told that I was the problem. But she just listened. Her face remained calm, but her eyes grew sharp, focused. When I finally stopped, gasping for air as if I had just run a sprint, the room was quiet. "Natalie," Dr. Jensen said softly, "I want you to take a breath." I did. It shuddered in my chest. "What you are describing," she said, leaning forward, "has a name. It is not just family drama. It is a combination of coercive control, financial exploitation, and battery." Hearing the words out loud, spoken in a clinical, detached tone, was like having a bucket of ice water thrown over me. "But my father," I whispered, "he is sick. He has a heart condition. If I confront them, if I report this, the stress could kill him. Lynn tells me that all the time. She says if I upset him, it is on my head." "Doctor." Jensen picked up her pen. She wrote 2 words on her pad, then turned it around so I could see. "Weaponized frailty. She is using his health as a shield," Dr. Jensen said, "and she is using your empathy as a weapon against you. That is the hallmark of coercive control. She has trained you to believe that his survival is entirely dependent on your submission. But Natalie, let me ask you a question. Who put him in that position? Who spent the money? Who forged the signatures?" She did. I said, "And who is responsible for the consequences of those actions?" I hesitated. The old programming ran deep. I felt the crushing weight of guilt, the fear that I would be the villain who destroyed the family unit. I feel like, if I call the police, or if I freeze the accounts, I am the one pulling the trigger. I said, I am the one blowing it all up. Doctor, Jensen shook her head firmly. No, that is the lie she wants you to believe. Imagine you walked past a building that was on fire. The arsonist is standing there holding a gas can. If you call the fire department, did you burn the building down? Or did you just acknowledge the fire that was already burning? I stared at her. The analogy landed perfectly. They burned it down, I whispered. They burned it down years ago. I have just been standing inside the flames, pretending it was warm. Exactly, she said. You are not destroying the family. Natalie, the family unit you are trying to save does not exist. It is a fabrication designed to extract resources from you. You are not a daughter to them right now. You are an asset, and when an asset stops performing, management gets aggressive. That is what happened in the parking lot. You tried to set a boundary, and Lynn tried to beat you back into compliance. The clarity of it was blinding. For years, I had felt like I was fighting a fog, trying to grab onto something solid while Lynn shifted the ground beneath my feet. But Dr. Jensen was handing me a map. So what do I do? I asked. I cannot just stop. I do not know how to stop. We are going to strategize, she said. I want you to tap into that part of yourself that you use at work. You are a data analyst, right? You look for patterns. You manage risk. I nodded. Treat this like a case, she said. Detach the emotion. When Lynn calls you crying, that is not your mother figure in distress. That is a data point. That is a tactic. When your father calls you mumbling about loyalty, that is another tactic. We are going to script your responses. For the next 30 minutes, we role-played. It felt ridiculous at first, but then it felt empowering. Okay, Doctor, Jensen said, pitching her voice higher, mimicking a frantic tone. Natalie, your father is having palpitations. He needs this medication and the card was declined. How could you do this to him? I swallowed, my heart racing even in the simulation. I took a deep breath and looked at the script we had written. I am sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my voice flat. If it is a medical emergency, you need to call 911. I am not authorizing any further transactions. Good, Dr. Jensen said, but you sounded apologetic. Do not apologize. Try it again. If he is in danger, call 911. I said, firmer this time. I cannot help you with the money. Dr. Jensen nodded. Again. By the 5th time, I didn't feel the panic rising in my throat. I felt cold. I felt protected. I realized that I did not have to absorb their chaos. I could just be a wall that the chaos crashed against. As the session neared its end, Dr. Jensen opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a small, heavy cardstock. I usually do not give specific legal referrals, she said, but your situation involves complex financial fraud and elder abuse dynamics. You need someone who understands that this is not just a family dispute. She handed me the card. The name on it was Evelyn Vance, attorney at law, specializing in financial exploitation and elder law. Evelyn is a shark, Dr. Jensen said, and she smiled a little, but she is a shark who eats other sharks. She understands the mechanism of control. Go see her. Take your spreadsheet. Take that video. I took the card. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like a weapon. I walked out of the office into the bright Denver afternoon. The sun was shining, but I did not feel the warm, fuzzy glow of healing. I did not feel happy. I felt something different. I felt steady. For 32 years, I had been operating on a software that Lynn had coded for me, a program of guilt, obligation, and fear. Today, I had begun the process of uninstalling it. That evening, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, the glow of my monitor illuminating the room. I had the raw video file that Caleb had emailed me. I watched it one more time. I watched Lynn's face change from rage to victimhood, I watched myself stand there, taking it. I did not cry this time. I right-clicked on the file. I created a new folder on my encrypted external drive. I named it simply Pierce, Evidence, Incident 1. Then I copied the bank statements into the same folder. I copied the forged mortgage documents. I copied the credit reports. I was building a dossier. I was preparing a case. I picked up my phone and looked at the contact for Dad. I knew the call would come soon. I knew Lynn was probably already spinning a new web, telling him I had abandoned them, priming him to guilt me back into the fold. Let them call, I thought. I was not the bank anymore. I was not the retirement plan. I was the investigator, and I was just getting started. The law office of Olivia Crane was not what I expected. Located on the 3rd floor of a brick building in downtown Denver, it did not have the glass and steel intimidation factor of the corporate firms Clearline Metrics used. Instead, it looked like a paper factory had exploded inside a library. Files were stacked in teetering towers on every flat surface, including the floor, and a whiteboard covering one entire wall was covered in timelines drawn in 4 different colors of marker. Olivia herself sat behind a desk that was barely visible beneath the clutter. She was a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back into a severe bun and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She did not offer me coffee. She did not ask about my day. She simply pointed to the chair opposite her and held out her hand for the folder I was clutching. I handed it over. For the next 20 minutes, the only sound in the room was the rustle of paper and the ticking of a heavy clock on the wall. Olivia read everything. She traced the lines on my spreadsheet with a pen cap. She scrutinized the credit reports. She lingered on the forged signature on the mortgage document. I sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs, feeling like a student waiting for a grade that would determine the rest of my life. I wondered if she would tell me what my father had told me, that this was just how families worked. Finally, Olivia looked up. She did not smile. "You have been busy," she said. Her voice was dry, professional. I needed to know." I stammered. "Most people do not look," Olivia said. "Most people are too afraid of what they will find. You found a lot." Natalie. She tapped the spreadsheet. "This is not just mismanagement," she said. "This is a systemic extraction of assets. See these dates? Every time there is a large withdrawal from your account or a charge to the credit card. It correlates with a period of medical crisis for your father." I nodded. "That is when Lynn says she needs money for his care." "No," Olivia corrected me. "That is when she knows you are too emotionally compromised to ask for a receipt. She is timing the theft to your vulnerability. It is predatory." She pulled the flash drive I had included out of the folder. "And this?" "That is the video," I said, "from the truck stop." Olivia plugged the drive into her laptop. She turned the screen so we could both watch. We watched the argument. We watched the slap. We watched Lynn transform from aggressor to victim the moment she saw the truck driver. When the video ended, Olivia leaned back in her chair and let out a long, slow breath. "That," she said, pointing at the frozen image of Lynn's face, "is the pivot point." "I thought it was just assault," I said. "It is assault," Olivia agreed. "But in civil court, it is something more valuable. It is proof of character. It establishes that her control over you, and by extension, your father, is maintained through fear and violence. It proves that her public persona is a fabrication. Without this, she is just a grieving wife who is bad with money. With this, she is a danger." She stood up and walked to the whiteboard. She picked up a red marker. "We are going to construct a timeline," she said. "I want every date, every hospitalization, every transfer, every time she isolated him from you." For an hour, we built the case. It was terrifying to see it laid out in red ink. The pattern was undeniable. Lynn would isolate Mark, claiming he was too sick for visitors. Then, a financial crisis would emerge. Then, a transfer of funds. Then, a purchase for herself or Ryan. Then, a period of calm until the money ran out. It was an addiction. and my father was the resource she was consuming. When we finished, the whiteboard looked like a battle plan. Olivia capped the marker and turned to me. "We have enough for a civil suit for fraud and conversion," she said. "We can go after the money. We can try to get the mortgage invalidated, but that does not solve the immediate problem." "What is the immediate problem?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your father," she said. "As long as she holds his power of attorney, she controls access to him. She controls his medical decisions. And now that she knows you are fighting back, she will lock him down. You will never see him again, Natalie. And she will drain whatever is left of his estate before he takes his last breath." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "So what do we do?" "We file for emergency guardianship," Olivia said. "We petition the court to strip her of her authority immediately. We argue that she is an unfit fiduciary and a physical threat to the vulnerable adults in her care. We ask the judge to appoint you as his temporary guardian." The idea made me recoil. Guardianship. It sounded like kidnapping. It sounded like I was stealing my father from his wife. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't just take him. He loves her. He thinks she saves him. He is suffering from Stockholm Syndrome." "Natalie," Olivia said, her voice sharp, "look at the board. She is drugging him. She is stealing his home. She is alienating his child. If you leave him there, you are not respecting his marriage. You are abandoning him to his abuser." The harshness of her words stung, but it was the sting of antiseptic on a wound. I looked at the red lines on the board. I thought about the way my father had sounded on the phone. Weak, confused, repeating Lynn's words. "I need to know we can win," I said. "If we try this and fail, she will destroy him to punish me." Olivia sat down and typed something on her keyboard. "We need to lock down that video," she said, "and we need the man who filmed it." I pulled out my phone. I have his number. "Call him," Olivia said. "Put him on speaker video. I need to verify his testimony." I dialed Caleb. He answered on the second ring. His face filled the screen. He was in the cab of his truck, the background blurring as he moved down some highway. "Natalie?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" "I am with a lawyer." "Caleb," I said. "Her name is Olivia Crane. We are building a case." Olivia leaned into the frame. "Mr. Ross, I am Olivia Crane. I am representing Natalie in a protective action against her stepmother. I need to know if you are willing to go on the record regarding the incident you filmed." Caleb did not hesitate. "Just tell me when and where, ma'am." "I need you to sign a sworn affidavit describing exactly what you saw," Olivia said, "and I need you to transfer the original, unedited video file directly to my office's secure server. We need to establish a chain of custody so the opposing counsel cannot claim it was doctored." "I can do that," Caleb said. "I am stopping in Omaha tonight. I will upload it then." "Mr. Ross," Olivia said, her voice softening slightly, "why are you doing this? Most people would have driven away." Caleb looked at the camera. His eyes were shadowed under the brim of his cap. "My sister," he said. "Her name was Sarah. She married a guy who was good at making her think she was crazy. By the time we figured out what was happening, he had drained her accounts and isolated her from everyone. It took us 3 years to get her out." He paused, looking at the road ahead. "I saw the way that woman looked at Natalie." He continued, "I saw the switch flip. I know that look. If I had driven away, I would have been leaving her in the cage. I could not do that." I felt tears prick my eyes. I looked at Olivia. She was nodding slowly. "Thank you. Mr. Ross," Olivia said. "We will be in touch with the upload link." We ended the call. Olivia looked at me. "That is a credible witness," she said. "He has no stake in the money. He has no history with the family. He is just a third party who saw a crime. Judges love witnesses like that." She pulled a fresh legal pad toward her. "With his testimony, the video, and the financial forensic trail, we have a strong case. I believe we can get an emergency hearing within 48 hours. But Natalie, you need to understand what this means." "Tell me," I said. "This is a declaration of war," she said. "Once we file this, There is no going back. Lynn will play dirty. She will tell everyone you are a greedy daughter trying to steal your dying father's money. She will try to ban you from the hospital. She will lie to the court. I looked at the timeline on the wall one last time. I looked at the $45,000 of debt. I looked at the years of my life I had spent trying to please a woman who only saw me as a paycheck. She has already done all those things, I said. The only difference is that now, I am hitting back. Olivia slid a retainer agreement across the desk. Then let's go to work, she said. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I signed my name at the bottom of the page. The scratch of the pen against the paper sounded loud in the quiet room. It sounded like a lock clicking open. I was done being the victim. I was done being the ATM. I was the plaintiff now, and for the first time in my life, I had a team. The process server had done his job at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 9:30, my phone had ceased to be a communication device and had transformed into a grenade that kept detonating on my kitchen counter. I did not answer. I sat at my island with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching the screen light up, buzz, and go dark, only to light up again seconds later. I had set my ringtone to silent, but the vibration against the granite sounded like a trapped insect fighting for its life. First, it was my father. He called 4 times in rapid succession. When I finally let the voicemail play on speaker, his voice filled the room, sounding thin and reedy, as if the air was being squeezed out of him. "Natalie," he said, and I could hear the wet, rattle-like quality of his breathing. "Natalie, why is there a sheriff at the door? Lynn is crying. She is on the floor. Natalie, she says you are suing us. She says you are trying to kill me. Why would you do this? We just need to talk. Just come home. We can fix this." I closed my eyes. It was heartbreaking, but it was also scripted. I could hear the pauses where he was listening to someone whispering instructions. I could hear the lack of genuine agency. He was not calling because he wanted to understand. He was calling because Lynn had wound him up and pointed him at the phone like a weapon. Then came Ryan. Ryan did not leave voicemails. Ryan sent texts that arrived in a machine gun staccato of misspelled rage. "You think you're smart? You think you can just steal this house from us? Mom is a wreck. Dad is hyperventilating. If you don't drop this by noon, I am coming down to Denver. I know where you live. I will show you what happens when you mess with my family." I stared at the last message. A year ago. That text would have sent me into a panic attack. I would have called, apologized, and begged for forgiveness just to de-escalate the violence simmering under the surface. Today, I took a screenshot. I opened my email and attached the image. I sent it to Olivia Crane with the subject line, "Threat of physical violence from stepbrother. Please advise." 3 minutes later, Olivia replied, "Drafting a petition for a temporary restraining order now. Do not engage. If he shows up, call 911 immediately. We are adding this to the file as evidence of intimidation." I felt a strange, cold sense of satisfaction. Ryan thought he was being a tough guy. In reality, he was just handing me another nail for their coffin. But the backlash was not contained to my immediate family. By noon, the ripples had spread to Aurora. Lynn was working the phones. I started getting notifications from Facebook, people I had not spoken to since high school, friends of the family, members of the church my father attended. "I cannot believe you would do this to a dying man." One message read, "After everything Lynn sacrificed for you, this is how you repay her? Ungrateful." She was painting a masterpiece of victimhood. In her version of the story, I was the greedy, estranged daughter who had swooped in at the 11th hour to seize the estate, while she was the saintly nursemaid being persecuted by a corrupt legal system. I was tempted to reply, to post the bank statements, to scream the truth into the digital void. "Doctor," Jensen's voice echoed in my head, "do not defend yourself against a lie. It validates the accusation." I put the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the Denver skyline. I felt incredibly alone. Then, the phone buzzed with a call from a number I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Patricia Miller. Patricia was Lynn's best friend, They had played bridge together every Thursday for 15 years. They went on spa weekends. Patricia was the one who had told me, at my college graduation, that I was so lucky to have a stepmother who cared as much as Lynn. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button. I assumed this was just another flying monkey sent to guilt-trip me. But something, maybe the sheer curiosity of what new insult they had concocted, made me swipe answer. "Hello, Patricia," I said, bracing myself. "Natalie?" Her voice was shaking. "Is that you?" "Yes, it is me." There was a pause, and I heard the sound of a door clicking shut on her end. I heard about the lawsuit," Patricia whispered. "Lynn called me. She is telling everyone that you are trying to put Mark in a home and steal the house." "I know what she is saying. Patricia." I wanted to call you because—" She trailed off, and I heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by a sniffle. "Because she is lying," Patricia said, "and I can't listen to it anymore. I can't watch her do this to Mark." My grip on the phone tightened. "What do you mean?" "Natalie, about 6 months ago, we were at lunch. We had had a few glasses of wine. Lynn was bragging. She was laughing about how she got you to pay for the new deck. She called you her golden goose. She said she had Mark so confused on his meds that he would sign a napkin if she told him it was a check." I felt the blood rush in my ears. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another to hear that she had laughed about it over salad and Pinot Grigio. "Did she say anything else?" I asked, my voice trembling. "She showed us the texts," Patricia said, sounding disgusted. "The ones where you were begging her to take him to the doctor. And she was ignoring you but telling you she was at the clinic. She thought it was funny. She said you were so easy to manage. Natalie, I have the screenshots. She sent them to our group chat to mock you." I closed my eyes, a tear leaking out. The cruelty was so casual. It was sport to her. "Patricia," I said, "I have a lawyer. Would you be willing to send me those screenshots?" "I will send them right now," Patricia said. "And if you need me to talk to someone, I will. I know I should have said something sooner, but she can be scary." "I know," I said. "Thank you. Patricia, you have no idea what this means." 10 minutes later, I had the screenshots. They were damning. Lynn mocking my fear for my father's life. Lynn boasting about forging a signature on a contractor's invoice. It was the smoking gun of intent. But the allies were not done surfacing. An hour later, my Aunt Diane called. Diane was my father's younger sister, a woman who lived in Arizona and had been slowly pushed out of our lives by Lynn's gatekeeping. "I heard you finally did it," Diane said without preamble. "I did." I said. "Good," she said. "It is about damn time." She let out a long sigh. "Natalie, I visited your dad last Christmas. You weren't there. Lynn said you were too busy working." "I was never told you were visiting," I said. "I figured," Diane said. "Listen, I had a moment alone with Mark in the garage. He was lucid for about 10 minutes. He was crying. Nat, he told me he felt like a prisoner in his own house. He said he knew the money was gone. He said he wanted to leave, but he was too tired to fight her. He made me promise not to tell you because he didn't want you to worry." "He knew?" I whispered. "He knew he was trapped," Diane said. "He just didn't know how to get out. But if you are opening the door for him, I am going to help you hold it open. I will testify to what he told me. I will testify that she wouldn't let me see him alone for the rest of the trip." I hung up the phone feeling a shift in the atmosphere. The isolation was breaking. The silence that Lynn had used to control us was shattering. But Lynn was not going quietly. She made a tactical error that same afternoon, one that revealed just how desperate she had become. She went after Caleb. I received a call from Olivia Crane at 4 o'clock. Her voice was brisk, almost cheerful. "Natalie, you are not going to believe what your stepmother just did," Olivia said. "What? Did she violate the order?" "She called Summit Ridge Transport," Olivia said. "She called the corporate headquarters of the trucking company Caleb Ross works for. She managed to get through to a dispatch manager and lodged a formal complaint. She claimed Caleb had stalked her on the highway. harassed her at the rest stop, and doctored video footage to blackmail her. She demanded his immediate termination. My stomach dropped. Oh my God. Is he fired? I dragged him into this. Olivia laughed. A dry, sharp sound. No, Natalie. She didn't understand who she was dealing with. Summit Ridge is a national logistics firm. They have trucks carrying millions of dollars in cargo. Their trucks are equipped with state-of-the-art telemetry and recording equipment for liability reasons. And Caleb reported the incident immediately to his safety officer. When Lynn called, the legal department at Summit Ridge pulled the raw data from the truck's hard drive. They saw exactly what we saw. But more importantly, they saw a woman trying to use their corporate complaint line to intimidate a witness in a pending legal matter. Olivia paused for effect. The general counsel for Summit Ridge just contacted me. She said, "They are not firing Caleb. They are authorizing him to cooperate fully with us. They are also considering filing a cease and desist against Lynn for harassment of their employee. She tried to get a working man fired to silence him, and instead, she just poked a very large, very well-funded bear." I sat down on my couch, stunned. Lynn's world was so small, so governed by petty manipulation, that she thought she could bully a national corporation the way she bullied a teenager. "She is self-destructing," I said. "She is panicked," Olivia corrected, "and panicked people make mistakes. But be careful. Natalie, an animal is most dangerous when it is cornered." As if on cue, my phone buzzed one last time that evening. It was a voicemail, from Lynn directly. I did not want to listen to it, but I knew I had to. I pressed play. Her voice was different this time. It was not the sweet, fake tone she used for the police. It was not the hysterical victim tone she used for my father. It was the voice from the car, the voice that smelled of peppermint and venom. "Natalie," she hissed. The recording quality was grainy, distorted. "You think you are winning? You think a few pieces of paper change anything? You are dead to this family. I just got off the phone with the estate lawyer. We are writing you out. Every penny, every picture frame, every memory. It is gone. Your father will not even look at a photo of you anymore. You are going to die alone with your money, and you will never set foot in this house again. Drop this lawsuit, or I swear to God, I will make sure the only time you see your father again is in a casket." The message ended with a click. The old Natalie would have collapsed. The old Natalie would have heard the rejection and the threat of ultimate abandonment and crumbled. But I sat there, listening to the silence of my apartment. I replayed the words in my head. "We are writing you out." The irony was palpable. There was nothing left to write me out of. She had already spent the inheritance. She had already mortgaged the house. The threat was empty because the vault was empty. I forwarded the voicemail to Olivia. "Add this to the file," I typed. "Evidence of coercion and intent to alienate." I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. The battle lines were drawn in permanent ink now. Lynn was fighting for dominion, for the right to own people, to consume them, to control the narrative. She was fighting to keep the lights off so no one could see the mess she had made. I was fighting for something else. I was not fighting for the money. I was not even fighting for the house. I was fighting for the truth. I was fighting for the man my father used to be before he was drugged into submission. And most of all, I was fighting for the right to walk through the world without looking over my shoulder to see if her hand was raised. I took a sip of water. Let her scream. I thought, let her threaten. The door was open, and I was not the only one walking through it anymore. The air in the Denver County courtroom was recycled and stale, smelling of floor wax and nervous sweat. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Olivia, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned the color of bone. The heavy oak doors swung open, and Lynn entered. She was a vision of wronged matriarchy. She wore a navy blue dress with a high collar and a single strand of pearls. Modest, respectable. The uniform of a woman who baked cookies for the church bake sale. Her makeup was applied with strategic restraint, just enough to hide the hardness in her eyes, but not enough to conceal the shadows of sleepless nights she wanted the judge to see. She did not look at me. She kept her chin high. clutching a handkerchief like a talisman. Behind her came the wheelchair. My breath hitched in my throat. My father, Mark, was slumped in the seat, pushed by a court-appointed aide. He looked smaller than I remembered, his skin the color of old parchment. His eyes darted around the room, unfocused, landing on me for a second without recognition before sliding away to Lynn. He looked like a man who had been adrift at sea for weeks. "They have him on something heavy," Olivia whispered to me, not looking up from her files. "Look at his pupils. They are pinpricks." Lynn's lawyer, a man named Sterling with a suit that cost more than my first car, stood up for his opening statement. He had a voice like warm syrup, soothing and sticky. "Your Honor," he began, gesturing toward Lynn as if she were a wounded bird, "we are here today because of a tragic misunderstanding. We have a daughter, successful and ambitious, who has misinterpreted the messy, communal nature of family survival as exploitation. Yes, finances were shared. Yes, lines were blurred. But this was done to keep a roof over a dying man's head, not to enrich a devoted wife who has cleaned his bedpans and held his hand while his daughter was busy climbing the corporate ladder." I felt the shame heat up my neck. It was a good narrative. It played on every prejudice about cold, career-focused children abandoning their aging parents. Then Olivia stood up. She did not use syrup, she used steel. "Your Honor," she said, walking to the easel she had set up, "this is not a case about family sharing. This is a case about forensic theft." She flipped the chart. "Here is a timeline of Mr. Pierce's medical episodes," she said, tapping a red line. "And here, in green, are the dates of significant withdrawals from my client's accounts. Note the correlation. Every time Mr. Pierce is rushed to the urgent care, a transfer of exactly $5,000 is made. Every time he is sedated, a credit card application is filed. This is not survival. This is a harvest." The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, leaned forward, looking at the chart. Sterling tried to object, claiming the medical records were privileged, but Olivia produced the subpoena authorizations we had secured days ago. "We are not discussing his diagnosis," Olivia said calmly. "We are discussing the timing of his sedation relative to the theft of his daughter's identity." The tension in the room ratcheted up a notch. Lynn shifted in her seat, smoothing her skirt. She shot a look at Mark, checking to see if he was listening. He was staring at the water pitcher on the table. "Call your first witness," the judge said. Olivia nodded. "We call Caleb Ross." The doors opened, and Caleb walked in. He looked uncomfortable in a gray suit that was a size too tight in the shoulders, but he walked with the steady, rolling gait of a man who spent his life on the road. He took the stand, swore the oath, and sat down, his large hands resting on his knees. "Mr. Ross," Olivia asked, "can you state your occupation for the court?" "I am a long-haul logistics driver for Summit Ridge Transport," Caleb said. His voice was deep, filling the room without effort. "And where were you on the afternoon of October 12th? "I was parked at the I-80 Travel Plaza just outside of Cheyenne, taking my mandatory rest break." "Can you tell the court what you saw?" Caleb looked directly at Lynn. She stared back, her eyes wide with a silent warning. Caleb did not blink. "I saw that lady," he said, pointing a calloused finger at her. "She was driving a luxury SUV. She pulled in and parked next to the rig beside mine. For about 10 minutes. The younger lady in the passenger seat, that is Ms. Pierce over there, was asking to get out. I could see her through the window. She looked like she was in pain." "And did the defendant let her out?" "No, ma'am. She kept the doors locked. She was yelling. I could not hear the words through the glass, but I saw the finger pointing." "Then what happened?" "Eventually, Ms. Pierce got out. She started walking toward the restroom. The older lady jumped out, ran around the hood, and grabbed her. She yanked her back. Ms. Pierce tried to pull away. Then the older lady slapped her. Open hand, hard enough to snap her head back. Sterling jumped up. "Objection. Hearsay." The witness was 50 feet away inside a truck. "I have video, Your Honor," Olivia said simply. The judge waved her hand. "Overruled." Play the video. Olivia connected her laptop to the courtroom monitor. The screen flickered to life. The quality was stark and high definition. The wide-angle lens of Caleb's rig captured the entire scene in brutal clarity. The courtroom watched as the SUV door opened. They watched Lynn lunge. They watched the slap. The sound of the impact, a sharp, wet crack, echoed through the speakers. A murmur went through the gallery. I saw the court reporter flinch. But the most damning part was not the violence. It was the aftermath. The video showed Lynn looking up, spotting Caleb's truck, and instantly transforming. Her posture collapsed. She threw her hands up. She started mouthing the words, "Help me." It was a performance, and now everyone knew it. I looked at Lynn. Her face was pale, the rouge standing out like clown paint. She was gripping the table so hard her fingernails were white. Olivia stopped the video. "Mr. Ross," Olivia said, "when the police officer arrived, did the defendant tell him the truth?" "No," Caleb said. "She told him the daughter was crazy. She said the daughter attacked her. She tried to get the girl arrested." "Thank you. Your witness." Sterling stood up, adjusting his tie. He knew he had to destroy Caleb's credibility. "Mr. Ross," he said, smiling a shark smile, "you drive long hours. Do you not? 10, 11 hours a day?" "That is the federal limit. Yes," Caleb said. "And you were at the end of a shift? You were tired? Maybe your eyes were playing tricks on you in the flat light of a Wyoming afternoon?" Caleb leaned into the microphone. "Sir, my rig is equipped with a lane departure warning system, 3 blind spot cameras, and a forward-facing 4K dash cam. I do not rely on my eyes alone, but even if I did, I have 20/20 vision, and I know the difference between a slap and a hug." Sterling pressed on, desperate. "But you have a bias against authority, don't you? You intervened in a police matter." "I intervened in an assault," Caleb corrected him. "And if standing up for a woman being beaten makes me biased, then I guess I am guilty." Sterling looked at the judge, realizing he was losing ground. He sat down abruptly. "Next witness," the judge said, her voice tighter than before. Olivia put a hand on my arm. "You are up." I walked to the witness stand. My legs felt like jelly, but my mind was clear. I sat down and looked out at the room. I saw my father, his head lolling slightly to the side. I saw Lynn, her eyes drilling into me with pure hatred. Olivia walked me through the basics: my job, my income, the history of my financial support. "Natalie," Olivia asked, "why did you authorize the transfer of $5,000 on August 3rd? "I didn't," I said clearly. "I was in Chicago at a conference. The transfer was made from my father's home computer." "Did you sign the loan documents for the second mortgage?" "No, that is not my signature. It is a digital copy of my signature from an old birthday card I sent my father. If you look closely at the pixels, you can see the artifacting." Sterling stood up for cross-examination. He walked toward me, looming large. "Ms. Pierce," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you are angry, aren't you? You hate your stepmother. You resent that your father chose her." I took a breath. This was the trap. If I got angry, I proved I was the hysterical daughter. "I am angry," I said, keeping my voice level. "Aha!" Sterling said, turning to the gallery. "She admits it. This is a vendetta." "I am angry," I continued, speaking over him, because I work 60 hours a week to build a career, and I found out that my identity was used to buy a pickup truck for a stepbrother who calls me names. I am angry because I was told my father would die if I did not pay, only to find out the money went to a kitchen renovation. Sterling flushed. "But you signed the checks. You enabled this." "I paid the ransom," I said, looking directly at my father, "because I was told he was the hostage. I did not know I was paying the kidnapper." Silence descended on the courtroom. It was heavy and absolute. Sterling opened his mouth to retort, but he had nothing. He looked at Lynn, who was shaking her head slightly, her composure completely shattered. The judge cleared her throat. She looked at the clock, then at Mark Pierce in his wheelchair. We are going to take a 15-minute recess, the judge said. When we return, I want to hear from Mr. Pierce. I want to know if he understands where he is and who signed those documents. She banged the gavel. As everyone stood, I looked at Lynn. She was not looking at me anymore. She was leaning over my father, whispering frantically into his ear, her hand gripping his shoulder. "Mark, listen to me." I heard her hiss. "You have to tell them. You have to tell them we did it together." My father blinked, looking up at her with confused, watery eyes. The bailiff stepped between them. "Ma'am, step away from the witness." Lynn recoiled, her mask slipping entirely for a split second, revealing the snarl beneath. I walked back to the table, my heart pounding. The truck driver had held the door open. I had walked through it. Now, it was up to the old man in the wheelchair to decide if he wanted to leave the burning building or stay in the fire. The recess was only 15 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime suspended in a vacuum. I stood near the water fountain, pretending to read a file, but my eyes were locked on the bench at the far end of the corridor. My father sat in his wheelchair, his head bowed. Lynn hovered over him. She was not shouting. Shouting would attract the bailiffs. She was whispering, her lips brushing against his ear, her hand resting on his shoulder in a grip that looked affectionate from a distance, but was likely digging into his collarbone. I knew exactly what she was saying. I knew the script because she had used it on me for years. She was painting a picture of a cold, sterile room in a state-run facility. She was telling him that without her, he would be left to rot in soiled sheets, surrounded by strangers. She was telling him that I was too busy, too selfish, and too cruel to care for him. She was telling him that she was his only salvation. I watched his shoulders slump further. I saw him nod, a jerky, mechanical motion. My stomach twisted into a knot. I wanted to run over there and pull her away, but Olivia held me back. "If you intervene now, it looks like coercion," Olivia said softly. "He has to walk into that room and make a choice. If he chooses her after everything we have shown him, then we have done all we can." I hated her logic, but I knew she was right. When the bailiff called us back in, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. The air was heavier. The judge looked impatient. Mark Pierce was wheeled to the witness stand. The court clerk swore him in. He looked terrifyingly frail under the harsh fluorescent lights. His suit, which used to fit him perfectly, hung loose on his frame. Lynn's lawyer, Sterling, approached him first. He used a gentle, coaxing voice, like he was speaking to a frightened child. "Mr. Pierce," Sterling said, "we have heard a lot of accusations today. I want to ask you a simple question. Did you agree to add your daughter's name to the mortgage?" My father licked his lips. He looked at Lynn. She gave him a small, encouraging nod. "Yes," my father said. His voice was a rasp. We discussed it." "And the credit cards?" Sterling asked. "Were those opened behind your back?" "No," my father said. "We are a family. We share the burden. Natalie said she wanted to help. She promised to take care of the bills so I could focus on getting better." I closed my eyes. It was a lie, but it was not a malicious one. It was the lie of a man who was trying to keep the peace, a man who believed that if he just said the right words, the yelling would stop. Sterling smiled, satisfied. "So, you would characterize this as a consensual family arrangement, not theft?" "Yes," my father whispered. "Consensual." Sterling sat down, shooting a triumphant look at Olivia. Olivia stood up. She did not approach the stand immediately. She picked up a single piece of paper from her desk. "Mr. Pierce?" she said. Her voice was kind, lacking the sharpness she had used with Caleb. "I know this is difficult. I am not going to ask you about the mortgage right now. I want to ask you about an email." My father blinked, confused. "An email?" Olivia walked to the projector. She placed the document on the glass. It was a printout of an email from 3 years ago, sent from my father's personal account to my work address. "Can you read the highlighted section for the court?" Olivia asked. My father squinted at the screen. I can't see it very well." Olivia read it aloud. "Nat, I am so sorry. I found out Lynn put the renovation on the joint card. I told her we could not afford the granite, but she did it anyway. Please do not tell her I called you. I will find a way to pay you back. I just cannot handle another fight right now." The courtroom was silent. "Mr. Pierce," Olivia said, "if you consented to all these expenses, why were you apologizing to your daughter 3 years ago? Why were you afraid of your wife finding out you had contacted her?" My father shifted in his chair. I don't remember that." Olivia switched the document. "Let us look at your medical records," she said. "We have a deposition from your cardiologist, Dr. Evans. He noted in his file on February 12th that he advised you to lower your dosage of lorazepam because it was causing memory loss and compliance issues." She looked at him. "Did you know that on February 13th, the day after that appointment, a request was made to the pharmacy to double your refill?" My father frowned. "No, Dr. Evans said. He said I needed to rest." "Who called the pharmacy? Mr. Pierce?" "Lynn handles the pharmacy. My father said," his voice was starting to shake, "she organizes my pill box. She says I get confused." Olivia took a step closer. "Mr. Pierce, looking at this record, Dr. Evans specifically warned that increasing that dosage would make you highly suggestible. He warned that you might agree to things you did not understand. Did your wife tell you that?" My father looked at Lynn. She was staring at him, her eyes wide and intense, mouthing the word no. She said it was for my heart." My father stammered. "She said I needed to sleep so my heart would not give out." Olivia let the silence hang for a moment. "Mr. Pierce, on the dates you allegedly signed these loan documents, pharmacy records show you were administering the maximum dose of a sedative that your doctor had explicitly told you to reduce. Do you think you were in a position to consent to a $40,000 loan?" My father looked at the screen. He looked at the email he had sent years ago. A cry for help he had forgotten he made. The fog in his eyes seemed to clear. Just a fraction. He looked at the timeline Olivia had drawn earlier. I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know about the second mortgage." Lynn shot out of her chair. "He is confused," she screamed. Her voice cracked through the courtroom, shrill and desperate. "He doesn't know what he is saying. She has him twisted up." The judge banged her gavel. "Sit down. Mrs. Pierce, one more outburst and I will have you removed." But Lynn was past the point of strategy. The facade of the stoic, suffering wife had shattered. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are doing this," she yelled. "You are poisoning him against me. I kept him alive. I wiped his chin. You were never there." The judge signaled the bailiff. The officer took a step toward Lynn. Seeing the threat of removal, Lynn collapsed. She dropped back into her chair and burst into loud, theatrical sobs. She buried her face in her hands. "Oh, Mark," she wailed. "Mark, please, tell them we love each other. Don't let her destroy our family. She is throwing me on the street. Mark, after everything I did." It was a performance of nuclear proportions. She turned toward me, tears streaming down her face, her mascara running in black streaks. "Natalie, baby, please," she begged, reaching out a hand. "I am sorry if I was hard on you. I just wanted us to be close. Don't take him away from me. Don't be cruel. We are all he has." I sat still. A year ago, this would have broken me. Her tears, even fake ones, used to trigger a reflex of guilt so deep it felt like physical pain. I would have dropped the lawsuit just to make her stop crying. But today, I looked at her and I saw nothing but a predator whose trap had snapped shut on her own leg. The courtroom watched, uncomfortable. The judge looked disgusted. Then, a quiet sound cut through the sobbing. "Your Honor?" It was my father. He had turned his wheelchair slightly away from Lynn. He was looking up at the bench. His hands were shaking on the armrests, but his head was up. "Yes, Mr. Pierce?" the judge asked, her voice softening. My father took a breath. It rattled in his chest, but he forced the words out. If If I feel like I cannot think straight, he said, if I feel like I am being pushed, do I have to go home with her? The room went dead silent. Lynn stopped crying instantly. She stared at him, her mouth open in shock. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Pierce, you are an adult, unless you are deemed incapacitated. You decide where you go. However, there is a petition before this court to appoint a temporary guardian due to concerns about your safety and financial exploitation. My father nodded slowly. He looked at his hands. She told me. She told me if I didn't say what she wanted, she would leave me in a home, he said quietly. He didn't look at Lynn. He couldn't. A collective gasp went through the gallery. Olivia remained perfectly still, letting him speak. She said I was a burden. My father continued. She said Natalie didn't want me. She said Natalie only cared about the money. He slowly turned his head. He looked past the lawyers. He looked past the bailiff. He looked directly at me. For the first time in 10 years, I saw my father, not the drugged, compliant shell Lynn had paraded around, but the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who used to read to me before she came along and rewrote our history. His eyes were full of shame, but they were also full of love. Is that true, Nat? He asked. Do you not want me? I stood up. I didn't care about protocol. I want you, Dad, I said, my voice thick with tears. I have always wanted you. I just want you safe. My father nodded. He turned back to the judge. Your Honor, he said, his voice gaining a shred of strength, I do not want my wife to make decisions for me anymore. I do not think she has my best interests at heart. Lynn let out a strangled sound, half scream, half sob. Mark, you can't mean that. My father ignored her. He pointed a trembling finger at me. I want my daughter, he said. I want Natalie. She is the only one who told the truth. The judge nodded. She picked up her pen and made a note on the file in front of her. Let the record show, she said, that the protected person has expressed a clear preference. She looked at Lynn, her eyes hard as flint. Mrs. Pierce, I am granting the petition for emergency temporary guardianship. You are ordered to surrender all keys, bank cards, and medical documents to Ms. Pierce immediately. You are further ordered to vacate the marital home within 48 hours to allow for a forensic accounting of the estate. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. Lynn slumped in her chair, defeated. I didn't look at her. I walked past the table, past the lawyers, and knelt beside the wheelchair. My father reached out a shaking hand and covered mine. I am sorry, he whispered. I squeezed his hand. Let's go home. Dad, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where home was. The gavel did not make a sound like a thunderclap. It made a sharp, wooden click that echoed in the high ceilings of the courtroom, signaling the end of an era and the beginning of the rest of my life. Judge Holloway set her pen down and looked over her glasses at the defense table. Based on the testimony presented here today, she said, her voice devoid of ambiguity, and the compelling evidence of financial mismanagement and physical battery, I am issuing an immediate order revoking the durable power of attorney held by Mrs. Lynn Pierce. Lynn let out a gasp that sounded like a balloon losing air. She started to stand, but her lawyer, Sterling, put a heavy hand on her forearm to keep her seated. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am appointing Ms. Natalie Pierce as the emergency temporary guardian of Mr. Mark Pierce's person and estate. She will have full authority over his medical decisions and financial assets, pending a competency evaluation to be conducted by a court-appointed geriatric specialist within 30 days. But he is my husband, Lynn shouted, shaking off her lawyer's hand. You cannot do this. I have rights. The judge ignored her, turning her attention to the bailiff standing near the door. This court is also referring the file, specifically the evidence regarding the forged loan documents and the unauthorized transfers, to the district attorney's office for review. There is probable cause here for charges of fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and identity theft. The temporary restraining order is now permanent. Mrs. Pierce, You are to have no contact with your husband or stepdaughter until further notice." Sterling stood up, his face flushed. "Your Honor, we move for a stay of execution pending an appeal. To separate a married couple of 20 years based on a single hearing is denied." The judge cut him off. "The risk of continued exploitation is too high. The defendant has already demonstrated a willingness to use physical force and coercion to maintain control. The order stands effective immediately. Court is adjourned." The finality of it was breathtaking. Two bailiffs moved toward the defense table. Lynn looked at them, then at her lawyer, and finally at my father. Her face crumbled. The mask of the grieving, devoted wife dissolved, leaving behind a terrified, angry woman who realized she had played her final card and lost. "Mark!" she screamed, reaching out across the divide. "Mark, look at me. Tell them to stop. Do not let them take me away. I did everything for you." My father sat in his wheelchair, his hands gripping the rubber armrest so hard his knuckles were white. He heard her. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw a tear leak from the corner of his eye and track through the deep lines on his face. But he did not turn his head. He kept his eyes fixed on the seal of the state of Colorado hanging behind the judge's bench. For 20 years, he had looked at her to tell him what to think, what to feel, and what to say. In this moment, his refusal to look was the loudest statement he had ever made. "You ungrateful old fool!" Lynn shrieked as the bailiff took her arm. "I hope you die alone. I hope she leaves you in a gutter." The heavy oak doors swung shut behind her, cutting off her venom. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was clean. It was the silence after a fever breaks. I walked over to my father. He looked up at me, his eyes tired but clear. "Is she gone?" he whispered. "She is gone. Dad," I said, "she cannot hurt us anymore." He nodded slowly, closing his eyes. "I am tired. Nat, I am so tired." "We are going to get you some rest," I promised, real rest. I wheeled him out into the hallway. Olivia was there, talking on her phone, organizing the next steps. Standing near the elevators was Caleb Ross. He was holding his baseball cap in his hands, looking out of place in the sleek marble corridor. When he saw us, he straightened up. "How did it go?" he asked. "We won," I said. I felt a sudden surge of emotion, a gratitude so large I did not know where to put it. "Caleb, we won. She is gone." Caleb smiled. It was a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good. That is good." I walked over to him, leaving my father with the court aide for a moment. "I do not know how to thank you," I said. "If you had kept driving, if you had just minded your own business, then I would not be able to sleep at night," Caleb said. He put his hat back on, adjusting the brim. "I have a load waiting in Omaha. I am already behind schedule." "I am sorry," I said. "Don't be," he said. "It was worth it. But listen, Natalie, if that lawyer needs me again, or if they decide to press those criminal charges and need someone to stand in front of a jury, you call me. I don't care where I am. I will turn the rig around. I will drive 1,000 miles if I have to." "I believe you," I said. "You take care of yourself," he said, "and take care of your pop." I watched him walk toward the elevators, his heavy boots echoing on the floor. He was a stranger who had intersected my life for one violent afternoon, and yet he had done more to save me than people I had known my entire bloodline. Olivia walked up, slipping her phone into her blazer pocket. "Okay," she said, her mode switching instantly from litigator to logistics manager. "I have spoken to the bank. The joint accounts are frozen. I have flagged the credit agencies. Lynn cannot access a dime. I also arranged for a transport service to take your father to the Pineview Rehabilitation Center." "Pineview?" I asked. "That is the best facility in the state. How are we paying for that?" "We are using his assets," Olivia said grimly. "The ones Lynn didn't get to yet, and whatever we recover from the civil suit will go back into his care. But right now, the priority is getting him off those meds and into a safe environment where she cannot reach him." I nodded. "Thank you. Olivia." "Don't thank me yet," she said. We have one more stop. The judge gave us 48 hours to secure the house, but I want to get the documents now before Lynn finds a way to have someone break in. I have a court-martial waiting to escort us. The drive to Aurora felt different this time. The sky was the same vast, endless blue, but the dread that usually sat in my stomach like a stone was gone. When we pulled into the driveway of the house I had grown up in, it looked smaller. It was just a house. It was just wood and brick and siding. It was not a fortress of doom anymore. The marshal unlocked the front door. We stepped inside. The house smelled of lemon polish and stale air. It was perfectly staged, as always. The throw pillows were chopped in the middle. The magazines were fanned out on the coffee table. It was a showroom for a life that didn't exist. I walked through the rooms with a box, collecting the things Olivia had listed: birth certificates, deeds, insurance policies, passports. I walked into the kitchen. I looked at the granite countertops that I had paid for. I looked at the high-end refrigerator that had been bought with my identity. They were just objects. They held no power over me now. They were just evidence of a crime. I went into my father's study. This had been Lynn's command center. Her desk was organized with military precision. I started emptying the drawers, looking for financial records. In the bottom drawer, tucked under a stack of old utility bills, I found a notebook. It was a cheap, spiral-bound thing. I opened it. It was my father's handwriting, shaky, erratic, but unmistakably his. It was a letter. It was undated, but the ink looked old. "Dear Nat," it began. "I am writing this here because I am too much of a coward to say it to your face. I know what she is doing. I know she asks you for money. I know she makes you feel guilty. I want to tell her to stop. I try to tell her to stop, but then she gets so angry, and my chest starts to hurt, and I just take the pills she gives me and I float away. I am sorry I am weak. I promised your mother I would protect you, and I failed. I let a stranger come into our house and treat you like a bank account. I hope one day you can forgive me. I hope one day you walk away from us and never look back. You deserve better than a father who is too afraid to fight." I sat down in the leather chair Lynn had bought with his pension money. Tears blurred my vision, dropping onto the page. He had known, all this time, buried under the sedation and the fear. He had known. He had stayed not because he didn't love me, but because he was broken, and in his own twisted way, he had wanted me to leave to save myself. I wiped my eyes and closed the notebook. I put it in the box. This was the most important document in the house. It was the proof that my father was still in there, waiting to be found. I finished packing the box. I walked out of the study and met the marshal at the front door. "Is that everything, ma'am?" he asked. "That is everything," I said. I walked out onto the porch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. I looked at the driveway where the SUV used to sit. I looked at the street where I had learned to ride a bike. For years, I had thought that saving myself meant destroying my family. I had thought that walking away was an act of betrayal. But standing there, holding the keys to the kingdom Lynn had built on my back, I realized the truth. I hadn't destroyed the family. I had just turned on the lights. And yes, the light revealed the rot. But it also revealed the path out. I locked the front door. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy, satisfying thud. I walked down the steps to my car. As I opened the door, a sound caught my attention. Out on the highway, a mile away, a semi-truck blasted its horn. It was a long, mournful sound that faded into the distance. I looked up. I couldn't see the truck, but I could imagine it. I imagined a blue cab, and a driver with a baseball cap, and a camera rolling on the dashboard, bearing witness to the world. I smiled. I got into my car. I put the box of evidence on the passenger seat. I started the engine. I didn't look back at the house. I put the car in gear and drove toward the highway, merging into the traffic. Just another driver on the road, heading toward a future that finally, completely, belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. We would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, And hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.